The United States will sign a 20-point peace plan separately with Ukraine and with Russia, provided that it is agreed upon. This was stated by Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, according to Union citing European Pravda. Sybiha noted that as of today, the most sensitive issues regarding territory and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant remain unresolved. According to him, to resolve these issues, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is ready to meet with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. At the same time, Sybiha added that Russia still remains an obstacle in the peace process. The head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated, "The European side is with us, it is present in the peace process and in the agreements on security guarantees. For the first time, we are talking specifically about the term security guarantees, not just assurances."
It is important that there is agreement on the need to ratify the guarantees, in particular, their ratification in the U.S. Congress. There is another fundamentally important element, the presence of foreign troops.
It is currently assumed that there will be no American military troops in Ukraine, but several European partners are confirming the presence of their own contingents.
Because for future investors, it is precisely the presence of Western troops in Ukraine that serves as a guarantee of investment security. That is why we will continue to defend this position. It is fundamental for us.
Another fundamental component is the deterrence package, because the Russian regime must be made to fully and clearly understand the consequences of any possible violation of peace.
For this, Ukraine needs, in particular, self-sufficiency in the production of air defense systems and long-range weaponry.
Another element that is fundamental for Ukraine is membership in the European Union as a component of security guarantees. In turn, U.S. President Donald Trump stated,
"We are witnessing very positive changes in relations between Ukraine and Russia. Very good things are happening in the relationship between Ukraine and Russia."
Talks between Russia and Ukraine, mediated by the U.S. in Abu Dhabi, ended without a breakthrough. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that a new round of negotiations could take place as early as this week.
President Zelensky is ready to meet directly with Putin. And these are not just words. The president of Ukraine is reportedly ready to sit down at the negotiating table with the Russian dictator to resolve key issues of the war. This statement was made by the head of the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiha, who called what is happening in the peace process a possible beginning of a new stage of bilateral dialogue at the highest level. Against the backdrop of trilateral negotiations in Abu Dhabi, where Ukraine, the United States, and Russia discussed ways to end the war. This sounds like a dramatic turn of events. Well, you can find more information in our report. My name is Yevhen Sirov, this is the Glavred channel, subscribe and give us a like. Let's get started. According to Sybiha, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, is ready to personally meet with the president and dictator of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, to discuss two extremely sensitive and important issues that remain unresolved within the peace process so far. This concerns territorial issues, namely the future status of Ukrainian territories that are temporarily occupied by the Russian Federation, and also the control over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, one of the most dangerous facilities in Europe in the event of an escalation of the conflict. Sybiha emphasized that these two topics are the most sensitive and the most difficult of all those discussed within the framework of peace negotiations, and they require direct dialogue at the highest level. According to the minister, it is precisely to resolve these issues that Zelensky is ready to sit down at the negotiating table with Putin, to try to reach agreements or at least clearly outline the positions of the parties. At the same time, Sybiha added that he does not see any sense in meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. In this context, since the main issues of peace require the participation of the two presidents themselves. According to him, it is not worth creating parallel negotiation tracks, which can only complicate the process and distract. From the main topics. This is the first such public statement about Zelensky's readiness for a direct conversation with Putin after a long period when any contacts at the highest level between the leaders of Ukraine and Russia were considered almost impossible due to the war and the Kremlin's open aggression. Before this, as is known, the Russian leader had stated the possibility of negotiations, but only under very specific conditions. These included recognition of Moscow's demands, which Ukraine categorically refused to accept. According to the same sources, American and European diplomats who were involved in the trilateral consultations between Ukraine, the United States, and Russia. In Abu Dhabi, it is believed that the possibility of a meeting between Zelensky and Putin exists, but to make this happen, a number of serious obstacles must be overcome, including clearly defining the agenda, providing security guarantees, and gradually building trust between the parties. At the same time, another key condition for readiness for such a meeting is the coordination of positions with Ukraine's international partners, in particular with the United States, EU countries, and NATO. The Ukrainian side emphasizes that any bilateral dialogue with the Russian Federation must be part of a unified peace process. This process requires respect for Ukraine's territorial integrity and security guarantees, rather than separate agreements made behind the backs of its partners. At the same time, it is important to understand that for now, this is not a set date or confirmation of a meeting, but rather the Ukrainian president's readiness to sit down at the negotiating table with Putin, provided that the conditions for discussing key issues are ensured. The very fact of making such a public statement about this readiness, this is already a signal to the Kremlin that Ukraine is not rejecting the possibility of a diplomatic resolution to the conflict. However, it is emphasized that this must be peace on terms favorable to Ukraine, not peace at any cost. Despite this, the position of the Ukrainian president remains clear. Peace is possible, but only on terms that respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. Furthermore, direct dialogue with President Putin can only be a part of such a peace process.